Hey guys, tonight we're dusting off the sepia-toned photos and chain-smoking our way straight into one of the wildest, weirdest chapters in medical history, the golden age of doctors getting paid to promote cigarettes. That's right. Long before the Surgeon General was sticking warning labels on every flat surface, your friendly neighborhood physician might have been prescribing you a nice, relaxing smoke and pocketing a little tobacco bonus on the side. So, before you settle in for this aromatic ride through history, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment and tell me if your grandparents ever tried to cure a cough with a camel. Now, dim those lights, put a fan on for that soothing hum, and get comfortable. Maybe tuck your feet in so the ghost of a 1940s lung X-ray can't tickle your toes. But let's get curious for a second. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be a doctor in the 1940s? Did they actually believe cigarettes were healthy? Or was everyone just pretending? Did you get extra vacation days for endorsing Lucky Strikes? How did you choose between menthol and regular by horoscope? And what was it like having the medical community basically serve as the hype squad for big tobacco? All while wearing a bow tie and a slightly haunted smile. Was there a dark, smoky, secret handshake? Or just free cartons in the break room? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1947. Your office smells like a blend of formaldehyde and toasted tobacco. Your white coat has a faint yellow tint. And someone just handed you a check for recommending Chesterfields to pregnant women. Good luck. Welcome to your clinic. Faded wallpaper, a stack of Reader's Digests, and an ashtray so overflowing it's practically a small volcano. Patients cough politely, but no one thinks twice. It's just the sound of health in the 1940s. Let's set the scene. You swing open the heavy glass door, and a gentle fog greets you, the uniquely 1947 blend of disinfectant and second-hand Lucky Strikes. The air isn't so much breathed as chewed. Somewhere beneath the tang of nicotine and floor polish, you catch a hint of lavender, though that might just be the receptionist's new hand lotion valiantly fighting a losing battle. The waiting room is a shrine to mid-century optimism. There's a plastic ficus in the corner, bravely withstanding the onslaught of smoke, and a coat rack sagging under the weight of more overcoats than there are people in the building. Every chair is upholstered in a material that could be described as unsinkable battleship grey, and every cushion has a mysterious stain. Possibly coffee, possibly medicine, possibly the ghost of a previous patient's hopes. You take a moment to survey your domain. On the wall, a faded poster touts the calming effects of Chesterfields. 9 out of 10 doctors agree, it boasts. The 10th doctor? He's on the floor below, still testing unfiltered Camels for robustness. Patients flip through battered magazines, pausing only to ash their cigarettes into the communal volcano, which is now threatening to breach containment and roll embers across the linoleum. Listen. There's the cough again. Low, rattling, oddly melodic, like a jazz saxophone solo that's had a rough week. No one's embarrassed. In the 1940s, coughing is practically a handshake. You're here for your yearly checkup, your chronic nerves, or maybe just to get a fresh prescription for those calming menthols. In this room, a cough is a social signal, not a warning sign. It's as if everyone's allergic to the modern era, but at least they're doing it together. You spot Mrs. Robbins, fanning herself with a dog-eared National Geographic, blowing smoke rings, shaped suspiciously like question marks. Across from her, Mr. Evans is carefully tamping the end of his cigarette, dropping ashes directly onto his lap with the steady confidence of a man who hasn't seen the bottom of his tie in 5 years. A child with a runny nose tugs at his mother's sleeve, her other hand tightly gripping a pack of candy cigarettes. Everyone's got their vice. Everyone's got their place. It's time for your grand entrance, the doctor's signature move. You stride in, coat perfectly pressed, if a little yellow at the cuffs, and greet the room. There's a general nod of approval. Someone offers you a light. You accept, of course. Nothing says authority like a practiced inhale and a voice that's just a little husky from last night's research. You sit behind the counter, jotting notes on a clipboard. Mrs. Robbins, nerves. Mr. Evans, nerves and potential spontaneous combustion. Little Sally, start on filtered candy cigarettes, reassess in 6 months. The phone rings, a distant, shrill bell barely audible above the hum of conversation and the gentle sizzle of burning tobacco. You answer, voice calm, hands steady, and immediately begin scheduling another patient for a wellness smoke. The calendar is a patchwork of checkups, follow-ups, and the occasional cough consultation, which is really just an excuse for a shared break behind the building. Occasionally, someone cracks a window. It doesn't help. The smoke is as much a part of the waiting room as the furniture, the magazines, or the eternal rattle of the air vent. You've grown so accustomed to the haze that, on days when the office is smoke-free, the rare out-of-stock emergency, the place feels almost haunted, like something's missing, like you've accidentally wandered into the wrong dimension. And so you carry on, tending your volcano, prescribing your calming remedies, and shepherding your patients through another perfectly ordinary day in a waiting room where the line between healthcare and haze has never been thinner. Because in the 1940s, the real diagnosis is simple. Everyone's waiting, everyone's smoking, and nobody's worried yet. It's enough to make you wonder if maybe, just maybe, the wallpaper started out white. You glance in the mirror. Are you a trusted healer or just a glorified smoke salesman with a stethoscope? Your pocket holds a pen, a prescription pad, and, of course, a fresh pack of Lucky Strikes, doctor recommended. Let's take a moment to appreciate the uniform. Starched white coat, a little rumpled at the elbows from hours spent scribbling notes, and maybe, just maybe, from surreptitiously sneaking a smoke between patients. Your hair is combed neatly, side part as sharp as your diagnosis. The glasses, if you have them, are thick and dignified, perfectly suited for reading fine print or glaring at the pharmacist when your favorite brand runs out. You look, for all the world, like a paragon of medical virtue, if not for that faint yellow tinge creeping up your collar, a quiet reminder that you are, in fact, living in the golden age of tobacco chic. Now, let's talk about your morning ritual. Before you even step into the clinic, you light up. After all, nothing steadies the hand like a calming puff in the kitchen while reading this week's issue of Modern Medicine and Menthols. Breakfast is coffee, 2 slices of burnt toast, and a cigarette. A balanced meal by 1947 standards. If you're feeling fancy, maybe you sneak an orange into the mix. But it's really there to mask the smell for patients who prefer their doctors to be citrusy rather than smoky. You leave for work, briefcase swinging, stethoscope clinking against your chest. It's less marching to the front lines of public health and more parading to your corner office to collect another round of branded matchbooks from the tobacco sales rep. You walk past your neighbors, all of whom give a respectful nod. After all, you're the town's answer to everything from colic to existential dread. If someone needs advice, you're always ready. Doctor, what do you recommend for a tickle in the throat? A menthol, of course. It's the smoothest solution science can offer. Inside the clinic, your desk is a museum of promotional materials. There's a miniature display of cigarettes in glass tubes, a pyramid of free sample cartons, and a signed photograph of a famous actor you met at last year's Medical Professionals for America's Healthier Smoking Future luncheon. You're not just a doctor. You're an ambassador for an entire lifestyle. Every rep who visits leaves behind another token of appreciation. Your pen holder overflows with Camel and Chesterfield ballpoints. If there's a spot on your desk not covered by paperwork, it's probably because you moved an ashtray. You pride yourself on bedside manner, even if your bedside is never more than 10 feet from a fresh pack. Patients come to you for guidance, for comfort, for the peace of mind that only a white coat can provide. You nod gravely as Mrs. Callahan describes her anxiety. "Try one of these," you say, handing her a filtered sample. Doctor's orders. She trusts you. They all do. Why wouldn't they? The ads say 9 out of 10 doctors recommend it. And you're pretty sure you're at least 7 of them. You spend your day juggling charts and chit-chat, a cigarette always within reach. Between appointments, you swap notes with the nurses. Rough morning? Oh, you know. 4 cases of nerves, 2 of the jitters, 1 suspiciously healthy toddler. You both share a laugh and, naturally, a smoke break in the alley out back. The hospital is a social ecosystem, with everyone bonded by ritual and ritual smoke. Lunch is a sandwich, a black coffee, and a discussion of the latest research on filter tips. The consensus? Smoking might just be the secret to eternal youth, so long as you don't count birthdays after 40. A rare moment of doubt flickers through your mind, quickly snuffed out by the next puff. You finish the day with a final round of consultations, a stack of prescriptions, and one last luxurious cigarette. As you hang up your white coat, you wonder if you've done enough, healed enough, reassured enough, smoked enough. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Trusted healer, social counselor, honorary spokesperson for America's favorite habit. In the 1940s, that's just what a good doctor does. Back in med school, anatomy lectures came with a side of smoke. Professors puffed as they pointed out the lungs. And the only thing more essential than a dissection kit was a lighter. Let's rewind to your student days, where the grand old halls of higher learning smelled less like dusty books and more like a combination of chalk, formaldehyde, and burning tobacco. You shuffle into the lecture theatre, eyes bleary from an all-night study session, or possibly just from lingering cigar fumes. You take your seat among a sea of equally sleep-deprived classmates, each one armed with a set of dog-eared flashcards and a half-empty pack of whatever was cheapest at the campus store. At the front, Professor Lawrence, a legend in both medicine and chain smoking, lights up his 3rd cigarette of the hour. He gestures grandly at a set of plastic lungs, the smoke curling through the air in a demonstration of respiratory mechanics. You wonder idly if he even notices the irony. No one says a word. If anything, the haze adds a sense of gravitas to the proceedings, as if wisdom itself were delivered suspended in nicotine. You remember the rhythm of med school life. Early mornings in the library, afternoons in the anatomy lab, evenings in the student lounge where exam, anxiety, and tobacco were shared in equal measure. If you couldn't find your notes, you could always follow the trail of smoke to a cluster of classmates quizzing each other on the 4 chambers of the heart, while swapping matches and lighting up in solidarity. Coffee was strong. Stress was stronger, and the smell of burning tobacco was everywhere, absorbed in your lab coat, your notebooks, your actual soul. Study groups were less about studying and more about who could roll the best cigarette without looking down. If you managed a neat cylinder while reciting the cranial nerves, you were basically guaranteed a passing grade and lifelong respect. When finals approached, the student lounge transformed into a foggy war room, the only breaks coming when someone ran out of matches or a fire alarm was triggered by over-enthusiastic exhaling. The healthy habits didn't end there. Lunch breaks were spent out on the stone steps, blowing smoke rings and debating whether aspirin or whiskey was better for pre-exam jitters. Textbooks doubled as makeshift ashtrays. If you ever dropped your notes, half the time they'd come up with a fresh scorch mark and the faint aroma of menthol. Sometimes, you think, Your GPA was determined more by lung capacity than academic effort, and yet camaraderie thrived in that haze. There's something about learning how to diagnose tuberculosis while watching your professor take a drag that creates a special bond. A bond forged in mutual ignorance, blind trust, and a collective hope that none of you would be on the wrong side of a future case study. You remember swapping tips on memorization and cigarette brands, convinced that menthols improved recall and unfiltered Camels built character. Practical exams? A unique sensory experience. The cadaver lab had the strictest rules. No eating, no open-toed shoes, and definitely no ashing in the specimen trays. But the minute the instructor stepped out, the matches came out faster than you could say gross anatomy. Your gloves always smelled faintly of formaldehyde and tobacco, and the wash your hands before lunch rule was less about hygiene and more about not setting yourself on fire. Graduation came with its own smokescreen. As you marched across the stage, the air thick with pride and residual Marlboro, you couldn't help but feel prepared for anything the world might throw at you, so long as it didn't involve a non-smoking policy. Looking back, it's a miracle anyone survived med school at all. Between the lack of sleep, the mountain of textbooks, and the airborne particles that surely shortened your lifespan by a decade before you even saw your first real patient. But you made it. Cigarette in hand, diploma in the other, and a lifetime of smoke-filled wisdom ahead. Because in the 1940s, the real final exam was making it through med school and finding your lighter before your nerves ran out. In the lounge, physicians argue the big questions of the day. Is a filtered cigarette more scientific? Should menthol be prescribed for throat health? Or is that just for jazz musicians? Let's step into the sanctum of 1940s medical wisdom. The hospital lounge. It's the beating heart of the clinic, where white coats and tired faces gather between appointments to solve the world's greatest problems over a pile of fresh cigarette cartons. The air is so thick you could slice it and serve it with a side of toast. Cups of lukewarm coffee perch dangerously close to overflowing ashtrays, and the conversation is always lively. Here, the old guard nurses a straight Camel, insisting that real doctors smoke unfiltered. You want flavor? You want satisfaction? It builds character. And anyway, those filters are just a passing fad. Next, you'll tell me to wash my hands before lunch. At the far end of the couch, Dr. Simmons waves a menthol like a flag of progress. It soothes the throat, he declares, voice a little hoarse. My patients with a cough swear by it. Someone points out that his patients also keep coughing. The debate intensifies. It's not just a question of taste, it's a matter of pride. Brands become badges of honor. Loyalties forged in smoky fire. Chesterfields for the bold, Pall Malls for the refined, Luckies for those who want to be seen as in the know. A filtered tip is eyed with the suspicion usually reserved for homeopathy or herbal tea. Filters? That's just marketing, scoffs Dr. Harper, jabbing his cigarette emphatically in the air. They put it in a test tube, slap on a white coat, and call it science. Someone brings out a magazine ad. A glamorous couple, mid-laugh, extol the virtues of a gentler smoke. Gentler for who? A pediatrician grumbles. If I wanted gentle, I'd take up knitting. The intern at the table, eager to impress, claims he's read a new study showing filters may reduce irritation, sponsored by the world's largest filter manufacturer, Naturally. A hush falls, then a round of polite, derisive laughter. We'll see, someone says, when that kid's old enough to shave. Menthols, meanwhile, are the subject of clinical fascination. They're cooling, they're refreshing, they're what my grandmother smokes when her voice gets gravelly. For every doctor who touts menthols as a medical breakthrough, another snorts, that they're just a clever way to make a cough sound sophisticated. Jazz musicians, after all, get away with anything. These debates are more than ritual, they're survival. In a world where the science is fuzzy and the marketing is sharp, you cling to whatever logic helps you sleep at night. You're all reading the same peer-reviewed articles, most published in journals that also advertise tobacco on every other page. The evidence comes down to who's got the slickest pamphlet and the biggest donation to the hospital holiday party. Amidst the haze, practical experiments abound. I've found filtered smokes leave less residue on the stethoscope, claims one meticulous internist, brandishing a suspiciously clean chest piece. Nonsense, says his colleague. That's just because you keep dropping yours in your coffee. Everyone has an anecdote. A grandmother who lived to 90 on Pall Malls, an uncle who switched to menthol and never coughed again because he stopped talking entirely. The conversation drifts to patient care. Should you recommend one brand over another? Is it ethical to steer a patient to filters when the research is creative? What about the kids? I tell them to wait until they're 13, one doctor jokes, to scattered laughter. The line between science and satire is almost invisible. By the end of the break, nothing is settled. But everyone feels better. There are more questions than answers, and that's fine. There's always tomorrow's lunch, and tomorrow's debate, and another new brand with soothing vapor or velvet tips. The ashtrays fill up, the arguments fade, and the doctors file out to see their next patients, each secretly certain their brand is the healthiest. Because in the 1940s, the only thing more important than treating your patient was making sure your cigarette matched your stethoscope. You can't make this up. Drug reps today bring you pens, but in the 40s, they brought cartons. You're handed a branded ashtray, a calendar featuring glamorous nurses, and a year's supply of research samples. Step into your office on a Tuesday morning, and you'll find the pharmaceutical rep already waiting for you. Smile blinding, shoes gleaming, suitcase suspiciously large. Gone are the days of awkward handshake and ballpoint exchanges. This is the era of big tobacco and bigger gestures. Today's offering, an overflowing box. For the benefit of your practice doctor, inside, 6 cartons of filterless cigarettes, a metal lighter with your initials engraved, and a wall calendar starring Nurse June in 12 tasteful poses, one for every month and every mood. If it happens to coincide with cold and flu season, there might be a free case of menthol cough drops, also, incidentally, containing tobacco extract. For soothing, you try to play it cool, but honestly, the perks are outrageous. The branded ashtray alone weighs enough to double as a self-defense weapon. Last week, you received a cigarette selector wheel, a cardboard disc that helps you recommend the right brand for the right ailment. Chesterfields for coughs, Lucky Strikes for female complaints, Old Gold for nerves. The science is questionable. The marketing is not. Let's talk about the research samples. Every time a new blend hits the market, your mailbox fills up with brown paper parcels, each one cheerily labeled for clinical evaluation only, as if you're running double-blind trials in the doctor's lounge. In reality, it's a group taste test. Nurses, janitors, patients, everyone gets a carton. Which one tastes the least like despair becomes a valid survey question. Don't forget the displays. Tobacco companies compete for your attention with scale models. A tiny hospital scene with a tiny, healthy doctor, always smiling, always holding a cigarette. Last year, you received a crystal cigarette case etched with the words, "To your continued success and smoother inhalation." Sometimes you get matchbooks with your face printed on the cover, just in case patients forget who to thank for their improved well-being. Pharma reps are relentless. They glide in, immaculate and eager, trailing a scent that's one part aftershave, one part flammable. They've mastered the art of small talk. Rough morning, Doc? Nothing a Chesterfield can't fix. There's an easy camaraderie, a sense that you're in this together. Both members of the same grand mission to bring relief to the American public. One complimentary carton at a time. In the break room, the bounty is displayed like rare artifacts. Coffee mugs spill over with logo-branded pens, clipboards bear the names of 3 different cigarette brands, and someone's brought in a scale model of a healthy pink lung, made entirely out of marzipan. It's educational, claims the rep. And delicious. You have your doubts. What do you do with all these gifts? Some you keep, others are quietly re-gifted at the annual hospital holiday party, where the raffle table looks suspiciously like the back room of a corner store. The nurse with the most patient compliments wins the deluxe table lighter, engraved with "For outstanding bedside manner and ash control." It's all so normal, no one questions it. If a competitor tries to sneak in with just a notepad and a smile, they're politely shown the door. In the world of 1940s medicine, swag isn't just an incentive, it's a language, a token of appreciation, a symbol of status, a way to say, "Thanks for keeping our brand alive and burning." And yet, as you light up a sample after lunch, you wonder what future generations will think. Will they envy your haul of lighters, calendars, and ashtrays? Or will they wonder how anyone survived with so many gifts and so little skepticism? Either way, one thing's certain. In the 1940s, your goodie bag weighed more than your medical bag, and you couldn't bill for either. A patient walks in with stress and a hacking cough. The solution? A soothing, doctor-endorsed cigarette. You smile reassuringly as you write 1 pack per day to start. That's the magic of 1940s medicine, a world where half the answer is always try a different brand. Your patient, Mr. Baldwin, sits across from you, clutching a handkerchief that has clearly seen more smoke than the average fireplace. He clears his throat, coughs politely into the crook of his elbow, and looks at you with hopeful, watery eyes. He's worried about his nerves. He's worried about his lungs. He's worried about his wife's new habit of hiding his cigarettes, which, in 1947, qualifies as a medical emergency. You reach for your prescription pad. Pen poised with professional confidence. "How long have you been feeling this way?" you ask. A question that covers everything from existential dread to mild indigestion. "Mr." Baldwin sighs, describes his sleepless nights, his racing heart, his inability to focus on the crossword puzzle. You nod empathetically, making a mental note to restock the office with stronger coffee. And maybe a fresh batch of samples from the Camel rep. He glances around your office, his eyes lingering on the poster that proclaims, "For nerves and digestion, doctor approved." The implication is clear. If the men in white coats say it's good for you, it must be. You decide to double down. Sometimes, what you need is a little something to take the edge off. A mild, soothing smoke can work wonders for your mood. I find that the menthols are especially calming for a cough. Have you tried them? He admits he's always stuck to unfiltered, for that classic taste. You give a sympathetic nod and recommend trying a blend. Start with filtered in the morning, menthol in the evening, and maybe a few for nerves scattered in between. You hand him a free pack from the latest sample box. Doctor's orders. And remember, don't overdo it. 1 pack per day to start. We'll reassess at your next visit. Mrs. Jenkins comes in next, clutching her purse and fanning herself with a handkerchief. She whispers that her nerves have been simply atrocious since her husband started a new job, and the neighbor's dog won't stop barking. You check her pulse, which is racing, though that may just be the second-hand smoke filling your exam room. You need something to help you unwind, you say, reaching for your drawer. Out comes a carton labeled, "For Feminine Tensions, Chesterfields." You hand it over, assuring her it's the smoothest option on the market. She leaves smiling, reassured that relief is only a matchstick away. The parade continues. A teacher worried about her voice, a factory worker with a sore throat. Even young Tommy brought in for his nerves. You're careful, just a half pack, you tell his mother, and only after homework. Your prescription pad is working overtime. Your ashtray is nearing capacity. And your faith in modern science is as unshakable as your morning cup of black coffee. In each consultation, the ritual is the same. Listen, nod gravely, suggest the right blend. If the cough persists, recommend a new flavor or a slower inhale. There are no MRIs, no wellness apps, just the steady reassurance of a practiced hand and the lingering smell of toasted tobacco. You are the gatekeeper of calm, the guardian of doctor-approved remedies, the expert on which cigarette is best for a worried mind or a nagging cough. The punchline? Everyone leaves satisfied, clutching a branded carton like a trophy, convinced they've received the best modern medicine can offer. And as your last patient steps out, you lean back, light up a fresh one, and wonder, will tomorrow's medical miracle be even smoother? After all, in the 1940s, you're not just treating symptoms, you're prescribing peace of mind one puff at a time. Your bookshelf is lined with studies, most of them funded by tobacco companies, proving, apparently, that smoking is perfectly fine. Inconclusive data? Just call it science in progress. Let's talk about the hard science. Or at least, the soft science. Gently massaged, neatly packaged, and delivered with the confidence of a man in a starched lab coat and a cloud of doubt. Every physician's office in the 1940s boasts a small library of medical journals, all suspiciously glossy, all heavy with the scent of fresh ink and underlying optimism. You pick up a study with a title like A Decade of Healthy Smokers, Statistical Reassurance, and you already know the conclusion. The only thing missing is a scratch and sniff page that smells like toasted Virginia leaf. You flick through the pages. There are bar graphs, pie charts, and the occasional photograph of a beaming doctor enjoying his break. Cigarette in hand, of course. The methodology section is always delightfully vague. Sample size. A robust group of hospital staff and family members. Funding. Generously provided by the American Association for Well-Being, subsidiary of everyone's favorite cigarette brand. Conflict of interest? Not in 1947. If anything, a tobacco logo just means the research is serious. You wonder how anyone could take these findings at face value, but then again, you remember the times. Every magazine in the waiting room is packed with full-page spreads of medical findings. Headlines like, Doctors confirm, puffing keeps the nerves at bay, and surgeons endorse filters, the science of smooth. Fill your head as surely as the smoke in your lungs. The truth is, the entire medical profession is caught in a giant group project where nobody wants to be the first one to question the data, especially when the data comes with complimentary matchbooks. It's a little like convincing yourself that eating cake for breakfast is part of a well-balanced diet. You know deep down something isn't quite right. But look, here's a colorful chart, and the man presenting it has a bow tie and a degree. It must be fine. You take another drag, exhale thoughtfully, and turn the page to another glowing endorsement from the Council on Calming Remedies. If the science can't convince you, at least the testimonial from Dr. Harold Smoke, M. If you got M. Watkins will. Behind closed doors, the debates rage. You and your colleagues gather in the lounge, scientific journals scattered between ashtrays. Did you see the latest study? Someone asks. Apparently, they found no correlation between coughing and 3 packs a day, so long as you inhale gently. The group chuckles, a little nervously. Someone points out that the same research also found a positive effect on general morale. Another doctor quotes a different paper that claims smokers take fewer sick days, which everyone agrees must be true because Really, who would want to stay home in a house without good ventilation? Patients are reassured by the science, too. You explain, in your most professional voice, that there's no conclusive evidence linking cigarettes to serious harm. Sure, some people develop a cough, but that's just adjustment, like breaking in a new pair of shoes or developing a taste for black coffee. If a patient brings up rumors about lung issues or mentions an article they read in an out-of-state paper, you remind them that scientific consensus takes time. Until then, science in progress is practically a diagnosis. There's always a little voice, buried somewhere beneath the layers of tobacco ads and self-assurance, that wonders if maybe the data isn't as clear as the rep says. But in the age of denial, that voice gets quiet. After all, you've got another stack of new studies to get through, each one slightly more reassuring than the last, and each one making it easier to prescribe your favorite brand with a clear conscience. Because in the 1940s, if the science says it's safe, who are you to argue? Especially when the science comes with a free lighter and a smile. The evidence may be thin, but the smoke is thick, and sometimes that's all anyone needs to believe. You can hear it in the hallways. The distinguished rumble of a seasoned physician's cough. It's practically a badge of honor, right next to the coffee stains on your coat. In the grand orchestra of hospital life, the cough of a 1940s doctor is the bass drum. Steady, resonant, impossible to ignore. You wake up to it in the morning, echoing down the stairwell as you arrive for rounds. Some say you can tell the entire hierarchy of the staff by the sound of their coughs. The chief of medicine has a slow, dignified bark. The young intern hacks quick and nervous, always a little embarrassed. The head nurse coughs with such authority that a hush falls on the break room every time she clears her throat. This isn't illness, it's culture. Your own cough arrives like clockwork, just after your second cigarette of the morning and your first cup of percolated coffee. You learn to time your sentences around it. Good morning, Mrs. Davis. Hack, hack. How are we feeling today? The trick is to make it sound deliberate, even reassuring. A cough from a doctor, after all, isn't something to worry about. It's just the soundtrack of medical expertise. Between patients, the halls are filled with white coats and the staccato chorus of lungs putting in overtime. You trade wry glances with your colleagues as someone lets loose a particularly impressive wheeze. Doctor, Alan in cardiology can produce a note so low and gravelly it could be recorded for use in a film noir soundtrack. You make mental notes. Dr. Simmons is up to a 2-pack a day vibrato, while Dr. Kessler's cough now features a dramatic theatrical pause. Awards should be given. There could be a trophy, a golden stethoscope mounted on a mahogany ashtray, inscribed, "For excellence in persistent rattling." Outside of work, the cough follows you. At home, your spouse sighs sympathetically as you erupt into another percussive solo during dinner. Even the family dog knows to scoot away before the grand finale. At social events, doctors recognize one another from across crowded rooms by the sound alone. "Harold, is that you?" "I'd know that cough anywhere." "Chesterfield's, right?" "Of course. And you must be Pall Mall, still keeping it smooth, I see." Patients sometimes raise an eyebrow, but you wave away their concern with a tired smile. Occupational hazard, you say. Just comes with the job. It's almost comforting. Proof you're one of the gang, a veteran of long shifts, tense consultations, and too many sample packs. To be a 1940s doctor is to cough and keep moving. It's practically in the Hippocratic Oath. Do no harm, but if you must cough, do it confidently. Lunch breaks in the doctor's lounge are a symphony of chest clearing and throat soothing. Teacups rattle as the conversation pauses for a group cough. Someone cracks a joke about starting a quartet, the coughing clinicians. "We'd go platinum in the pulmonary ward," someone cackles, sending another ripple of hacks through the room. There's camaraderie in it, a shared ritual that binds you as tightly as a medical conference badge or a mutual dislike of paperwork. In rare moments of reflection, you do wonder if perhaps all this coughing is less than ideal. You recall your medical school lectures about healthy lungs, but those lessons feel faint and distant, drowned out by the wisdom of doctor-tested cigarettes and generations of confident exhaling. Any doubts are brushed aside, replaced with a fresh smoke and another round of coughs. After all, the studies are inconclusive, and the only thing truly proven is that the break room needs a new box of tissues. By the end of the day, you hang up your white coat, feeling the familiar weight of its pockets and its stains. The cough lingers, ever present, but so does the sense of belonging. In this world, a black lung is just another mark of dedication, a dark ribbon pinned beside your stethoscope. And honestly, who needs silence when you have the reassuring chorus of the medical profession's most consistent percussion section? After work, you head home, where the family room is foggy. The dog sneezes occasionally, and even the goldfish looks a little yellow around the gills. It's the 1940s, and your house, much like your office, comes with a built-in weather system. Perpetual haze with a chance of coughing fits. You walk through the door, hang up your white coat, and are greeted by the gentle glow of a half-dozen ashtrays scattered across every flat surface. The wallpaper, once a cheerful floral, is now best described as nicotine chic. The air has a flavor, part roast beef, part Lucky Strike, with just a hint of whatever cologne your neighbor wore last time he came by to borrow a light. Dinner time is a family ritual, performed under the faint hum of a ceiling fan, valiantly pushing the smoke from room to room. Your spouse puts out a cigarette just long enough to taste the casserole. Don't worry, there's another one burning in the kitchen. The kids giggle over their mashed potatoes, each one master of the fine art of blowing smoke rings through a straw. Even little Timmy, fresh from baseball practice, asks if he can light one for Dad as a special treat. You notice the family dog, once bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, now more permanently perplexed, sneezing in the corner, eyes squinted like he's lost in a noir detective novel. The goldfish, meanwhile, glides listlessly around its bowl, sporting a slightly jaundiced tint and the kind of thousand-yard stare usually reserved for submarine captains. Every living creature in the house has adapted to this atmosphere. The houseplants have gone on strike, leaves curled in protest, and the parakeet only chirps when someone cracks a window. After dinner, the family retreats to the living room for an evening of togetherness, meaning radio, board games, and synchronized smoking. You flip through the newspaper, pausing to read aloud an ad for doctor-recommended cigarettes for family harmony. Your spouse nods approvingly, and the children ask if they can cut out the coupon for their scrapbook. For a moment, you consider whether this is normal, but the moment passes, lost in the shuffle of matches and laughter. You take a seat in your favorite armchair, which has developed a personal relationship with your body shape over the years, not to mention the permanent aroma of robust tobacco. Your eldest, Sally, practices her cursive while absently tapping ash into a saucer. "Dad, why do grown-ups always look so relaxed?" she asks. You think about giving her a nuanced answer about adulthood, stress, and the placebo effect, but instead you just smile and say, "Doctor's orders." Evenings often end with a family sing-along, windows closed, of course, to keep in the warmth and the ambience. The dog howls along, the goldfish stares silently, and the parakeet coughs rhythmically in time with the music. Occasionally, a neighbor drops by, and everyone offers him a seat, a cup of coffee, and a fresh cigarette. It's only polite. At bedtime, you tuck the kids in, making sure their windows are just slightly cracked for circulation. You give them a goodnight kiss and a reminder to never take matches to school. School is strictly for learning, not lighting up. As you retreat to your room, you catch your reflection in the hall mirror. Eyes a little red, hair just slightly singed at the edges, but otherwise the picture of domestic contentment. And as you drift off to sleep, the house grows quiet, blanketed in a cozy, lingering fog. The outside world may be full of questions, but inside these walls, everything feels reassuringly familiar, even if it's just a little hard to see. Because in the 1940s, a happy, healthy home is one where everyone shares the air whether they want to or not. It's your big moment, time to smile awkwardly for a glossy magazine, hold up a pack and declare, "More doctors smoke Camels," because, well, you're contractually obligated. It starts innocently enough. One morning, the hospital's receptionist hands you an envelope thick with possibility. Inside, a polite but urgent letter from the tobacco company's marketing division. They're looking for America's most trusted faces to appear in the next nationwide campaign. Apparently, your dedication to medicine and ability to maintain a straight face while recommending menthols for a hacking cough has caught the attention of the bigwigs on Madison Avenue. Your reward? A photo shoot, a small honorarium, and, for the next year, your smile plastered on every newsstand from New York to Peoria. You practice your best, trust me. I'm a Dr. Grin in the mirror, but the effect is unsettling. Are you selling science? Or just selling out? There's no time for existential dread, because the ad agency's team arrives in a blur of excitement, flashbulbs, and complimentary cartons. The photographer, whose own cough could win awards, asks you to stand by a window, tilt your head, and look authoritative, but approachable. Maybe like you've just finished a particularly rewarding house call. They style your hair, starch your coat, and hand you a pristine, unopened pack of Camels. In the other hand, a clipboard for good measure. Now say the line, the director urges, adjusting the lighting so your lab coat looks dazzlingly white against the sepia haze. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. The words hang in the air, equal parts pride and bewilderment. It's the kind of line that'll haunt you for years, or at least until the Surgeon General finally sobers up the party. You shuffle through the familiar routine. Inhale, exhale, smile, repeat. The ad copywriter hovers nearby, scribbling notes. Can you look even more reassured? Think of it as reassuring the nation's nervous system, one puff at a time. You find yourself nodding. In 1947, nobody asks for a second take unless the smoke detector goes off. In between shots, you chat with the agency team. They regale you with tales of the last big campaign. A billboard of a stern-faced pediatrician recommending unfiltered Luckies for soothing growing lungs. You laugh, but inside you wonder if history will see you as a healer or an accessory to the world's biggest inside joke. The next week, the ad is everywhere. On magazine racks, pharmacy counters, the subway. Your face beams out from above the slogan. As your doctor, I recommend friends and colleagues tease you at lunch. Nice suit, doc. Is that the official camel crest on your breast pocket? Even the nurses ask for autographs, usually on the back of a matchbook. Patients are starstruck. They bring in the magazine and ask for a personalized recommendation. Do you really think Camels are smoother, doc? You flash your ad-ready smile and nod. The smoothest, doctor's honor. Nobody mentions that the office air is thick enough to slice, or that the only thing more persistent than your cough is your celebrity. At home, the family frames your ad for the mantle. The kids take it to show and tell. The goldfish, still jaundiced, seems unimpressed, but you've become a household name, for better or worse. Sometimes, late at night, you wonder about it all, the science, the salesmanship, the subtle creep of uncertainty. But you shrug, light up a fresh sample, and turn out the lights. In 1940s America, being the face of a tobacco brand isn't just respectable, it's practically patriotic. And if you ever doubt your place in history, just remember, your legacy is written in bold print and billowing smoke, sold by the carton and sealed with a smile you'll never quite outgrow. The nurses have their own pecking order, and it's all based on cigarette brand. New nurses are initiated with a puff and a wink. The real medicine happens behind the storage closet. Step into the nurse's station, and you're greeted by a social order as intricate and ancient as any medical chart. The head nurse, Mrs. Donnelly, presides with a Marlboro held aloft like a scepter. Her lieutenants, Miss Beck and Miss Gordon, puff daintily on filtered Chesterfields, all the while issuing orders, dispensing wisdom, and maintaining an atmosphere thick enough to slice with a tongue depressor. If you want to know who's in charge, just follow the trail of ash. Seniority is measured in brands, burn rate, and how long you can hold a conversation without actually exhaling. For new recruits, it's an initiation not covered in any textbook. The first day starts with a wink and a gentle push toward the break room, where someone offers you a cigarette and an unspoken question. Are you a team player, or are you about to ask for a window to be opened? The correct answer is obvious. The ritual is as old as starchy uniforms. Take a seat. Take a drag. Blend in. Only after that can you expect real answers to the mysteries of the hospital. Where to hide extra supplies. How to avoid Dr. Harris's wandering stethoscope. Which orderlies will actually help you lift a patient, and who to trust with your secret stash of hard candy or night shift menthols. The camaraderie in this smoke-filled haven is legendary. Gossip circulates faster than the ventilation fan. Did you hear about Dr. Simmons and his miracle blend for coughs? I saw Mrs. Powell sneaking a lucky strike to the X-ray tech. Rumor has it the chief surgeon actually prefers herbal cigarettes, but don't let anyone from advertising find out. It's all shared with a laugh, a cloud of camaraderie, and a level of deadpan wit that could cauterize wounds. You try to avoid the nurse's wrath, because while doctors have their titles, nurses have the keys to the storage closet, the medicine cabinet, the secret stash of cookies, and, unofficially, to every bit of information that actually matters. If a doctor's prescription pad is running low, or a patient needs an extra blanket, or you just want to know which hospital administrator is likely to faint at the sight of blood, you don't check the charts. You check with the nurses, but only after a smoke break, preferably outside by the dumpsters, where stories and secrets are exchanged along with matches and hard-won respect. Nurses' breaks are a sacred ritual, scheduled with military precision. 10 minutes for coffee, 5 for cigarettes, 2 to swap rumors, and 3 to check on patients who somehow always time their emergencies to coincide with the last puff. The break room is plastered with faded posters about hygiene and hand washing, mostly ignored, except when someone flicks ash dangerously close to the "Clean Hands Save Lives" sign. And don't be fooled by the laughter and the haze. When the call bell rings, every nurse straightens, ashes out, and moves with the quiet efficiency of a pit crew at the Indy 500. The cigarettes are stubbed out, hands washed, or at least briskly wiped on an apron, and the business of saving lives resumes. Patients might never see the choreography behind the curtain, but the real medicine happens not in the exam room, but here, behind the storage closet, where cigarettes, camaraderie, and just a dash of rebellion keep the whole hospital running. By the end of the shift, everyone's exhausted, uniformed, and slightly more yellow around the edges than they started. But there's a sense of unity that nothing, not the administrators, not the endless parade of doctors, not even the threat of a new smoking policy, can shake. Because in the world of the 1940s nurse, solidarity is sealed with a handshake, a whispered secret, and always, always, a shared cigarette. Posters in the waiting room boast, that smoking keeps you slim, calm, and free of nerves. You remind patients that a cigarette after dinner is better than dessert. Science. Let's step into the golden age of public health messaging, where the line between advice and advertisement is, well, mostly erased by a haze of cigarette smoke and the clink of marketing budgets. On the walls of your clinic hang gleaming posters featuring cartoon housewives and clean-shaven doctors, each beaming as they proclaim, "Keep fit. Keep calm. Keep smoking." Above the check-in desk, a larger-than-life cutout of a grinning surgeon flashes a Chesterfield, his other hand perched confidently on a chart titled Anxieties Down 1946, 1947. In the corner, a stack of pamphlets offers Tips for Tranquility. Step 1. Have a cigarette. Step 2. Repeat as necessary. It's a world where every minor health complaint has a cigarette-shaped solution. Stressed? There's a brand for that. Struggling with your waistline? Skip the pie and savor a smoke, endorsed by experts, naturally. A little anxious after the morning news? Time for a calming inhale. Even the local radio ads echo the same message, a soothing baritone declaring, 4 out of 5 doctors agree. For steady nerves and slimmer waists, there's no better medicine than a quality cigarette. You find yourself adopting the same script in your consultations. Mrs. Finnegan worries about her figure before bathing suit season. You nod gravely and recommend cutting out dessert. Replace it with a light after-dinner smoke. Mr. Talbot frets about the stress of city traffic. You suggest a quick cigarette in the driveway to steady the hands. Teenagers anxiously ask about acne. You hand them a pamphlet about keeping clear skin with clean living and a mild menthol. Public health posters don't just hang in your clinic. They're everywhere. Schools, train stations, even the community church bulletin board. At the county fair, a float rolls by, festooned with banners reading "Inhale Confidence" and trailing a scented cloud behind the local marching band. Every nurse, doctor, and pharmacist becomes a part-time spokesperson for the modern miracle of tobacco therapy. Even Santa gets in on the act in December, beaming from holiday ads with a pipe and a sack of doctor-approved blends. Behind the scenes, public health educators meet in smoky back rooms to plan the next campaign. Should the next slogan target working mothers or war veterans? Do menthols go better with sports or with stress? The research changes as quickly as the fashions, but the message stays the same. The only thing more American than baseball is a family pack of cigarettes and the freedom to light up at dinner. But let's be honest, some of the claims stretch the limits of medical creativity. Does smoking really melt away the pounds, or just make you too lightheaded to finish your sandwich? Can it calm your nerves, or just give you something new to worry about? Are the doctors in the posters really medical professionals, or just actors with convincing mustaches? The public doesn't ask. They're too busy following step 2. And still, for all its absurdity, the campaign works. Patients beam when you praise their self-control for skipping dessert. Children recite jingles from the radio. Grandparents thank you for helping them find relief from the trials of everyday life. At the end of each day, you realize you've become part doctor, part motivational speaker, part amateur admin. Sometimes, as you glance at the latest poster, a happy family picnic, smoke rising gently over the potato salad. You wonder how history will judge these campaigns. But for now, you smile, hand out another pamphlet, and remind everyone the healthiest thing after dinner isn't a walk or an apple, it's a cigarette, and you've got the posters to prove it. Because in the 1940s, public health means never having to say you're sorry, at least not until the next Surgeon General's report. You get a call, an emergency. Turns out, a B-list actor needs reassurance that his voice will last another season. You pack your doctor's bag and a carton of Camels. for the house call. That's showbiz, 1940s style. When Hollywood's finest fall ill or just slightly insecure, they don't queue in stuffy waiting rooms with ordinary folk. They demand service with a flourish, and preferably with complimentary cigarettes. The call always comes late, right after the evening's big radio broadcast. "Doctor, it's urgent. He's lost some of his signature rasp." Translation: his latest fan letter asked if he's been replaced by a sound-alike. Can you fix it before he's scheduled to croon into the NBC microphone tomorrow night? Your drive through Los Angeles is equal parts glamorous and slightly desperate. Palm trees line the boulevards, studio lights twinkle, and you rehearse your medical advice in your head. Rest your voice, drink some warm tea, and maybe try a milder blend in the mornings. But, as everyone knows, real healing comes from a doctor's gentle hand and a generous supply of tobacco, ideally with a famous face on the box. Arriving at the star's Spanish tiled bungalow, you're greeted by a nervous housekeeper and a lounge thick with the perfume of money, ego, and naturally, a smoky haze. The actor, let's call him Cliff the Throat Malloy, lounges on a divan, silk robe draped artfully, one hand clutching a monogrammed lighter, the other trembling just enough to be dramatic. "Doc, you've got to help me. My voice is my living. If it goes, so does my contract. And so does my supply of imported cigars." You assure him that he's in excellent hands, while you check his pulse, a little rapid from nerves, or possibly the whiskey. He launches into a soliloquy about the rigors of fame, long hours, late nights, and the endless need to project confidence. On and off the set. You nod, prescribe a few days of vocal rest, and, because no celebrity house call is complete without a little product placement, hand over a fresh carton of Camels. For when you really need to unwind, after a tough scene, you intone, as if reading ad copy. Cliff beams. His agent materializes from behind a velvet curtain, eager for a doctor's note he can send to the studio bosses. The housekeeper returns with an ashtray the size of a bird bath. Everyone, it seems, wants in on the act. Your job isn't over. While you're there, a knock at the door signals another emergency. Cliff's co-star, a starlet whose greatest talent is fainting photogenically, wants a preventative checkup. She pouts, asks if her perfume clashes with her brand of cigarette, and whispers that she's considering switching to menthols for that fresh feeling. You offer gentle advice, discreetly pass her a sample pack, and scribble out a quick note attesting to her excellent vocal health and admirable poise. Before you know it, word spreads. The phone rings again. An aging cowboy idol wants his chronic cough rebranded as character. You suggest a throat lozenge and a change in scenery, but mostly you listen, nod, and provide reassurance, and another carton. After all, Hollywood's elite run on a delicate blend of confidence, publicity, and doctor-approved smoke. As you drive home, headlights sweeping across billboards for the latest cigarette campaign, preferred by stars, recommended by doctors. You reflect on your role in the industry. You're part doctor, part therapist, part publicity manager, delivering not just house calls, but peace of mind and a free sample or two. In the morning, you'll see Cliff on the movie newsreel, crooning with gusto, voice intact, and a cigarette burning between his fingers. The credit scrolls by. Your name isn't there, but in the world of 1940s Hollywood, that's the real mark of success. A famous client, a quiet cough, and a role in the script of America's favorite addiction. Because, in the end, nothing soothes the nerves or the ego like a doctor's visit with a little stardust sprinkled on the tip of every camel. A pregnant woman nervously asks, "Is it okay to smoke?" You nod sagely and recommend she switch to milder brands, for the baby's sake, of course. It's 1947, and the doctor's office has become a confessional booth for expectant mothers. each one balancing anxiety, excitement, and a freshly opened pack of Chesterfields, Mrs. Patterson sits across from you, wringing her hands as she explains her worries, morning sickness, swollen feet, and rumors whispered at the hair salon that perhaps, just maybe, a cigarette now and then isn't so good for the baby. You give her your most reassuring smile, the one you reserve for the tough cases. After all, you've read the latest studies, printed on glossy pamphlets, handed out by men in sharp suits with research stitched into their briefcases. They all say the same thing. No harm in a few, especially if you're nervous. You lean forward and explain the current wisdom. The most important thing is to stay calm. If you find yourself feeling tense, a milder brand can help keep your nerves steady. There's even menthol, which can soothe a sore throat and, some say, settle the stomach. Mrs. Patterson's shoulders drop. Relief floods her face. She admits she's already cut down to 6 a day, just to be on the safe side. You gently suggest that's a very sensible number, and maybe try to avoid those harsher, full-bodied blends. She laughs then, and asks if it's true that smoking keeps baby weight at bay. You nod, quoting the posters in your waiting room. Helps keep you slim and satisfied. Science. At least, science according to the tobacco companies. You mention a magazine article you read over lunch, doctors approve, slimmer mothers, happier babies, and hand her a sample pack of Milds for mothers, conveniently provided by this week's pharmaceutical rep. The conversation drifts to practicalities. Mrs. Patterson wonders about labor. Should she bring a pack to the hospital? Of course, you reply. It's important to stay relaxed, and the nurses will be happy to lend you a match. You tell her about the hospital's new smoking lounge just off the maternity ward. A quiet, friendly spot where expectant mothers can share tips, compare cravings, and ash their worries away. As she leaves, reassured, you file her chart under normal, low risk, and make a note to restock your basket of complimentary, doctor-recommended brands for the waiting room. The door closes, and you find yourself wondering how much of your advice comes from medical journals and how much from the back of a Camel carton. But there's no time for philosophical questions. The next patient is already waiting, and she's looking particularly nervous about her 3rd trimester. You run through the same script, nod wisely, suggest a milder blend, offer reassurance, and smile at the relieved sigh that follows. If only all of life's medical mysteries were so easily soothed. Even the maternity nurses have picked favorites, arguing over which brand has the softest smoke and the best flavor for midnight cravings. It's camaraderie, comfort, and commerce, all rolled into one. You think back on your own training, the textbooks that never mentioned maternal smoking protocols, and the endless parade of advertising copy that fills in the gaps. Sometimes you wonder if the real risk is nerves or nicotine. But as long as the posters say doctor approved, who are you to question it? And so, day after day, you guide your patients through pregnancy with the steady hand of experience, a ready smile, and a pocket full of Milds. Because in the 1940s, peace of mind for mother and child comes wrapped in cellophane, doctor's orders. It's enough to make you wonder what the next generation will say, but for now, it's time to light up, relax, and call it modern medicine. You receive a letter. Congratulations, you've won a grant for your pioneering research on how smoking makes people friendlier. The tobacco lobby is very generous this year. The envelope arrives embossed and satisfyingly heavy. The kind of mail that makes you feel important just for touching it. You crack the seal, skim the polite letter, and let the words wash over you. We at the American Council for Sociable Living are delighted to award you this year's Medical Innovation Grant for your inspiring proposal to explore the correlation between tobacco consumption and improved community morale. There's even a commemorative pin shaped like a cigarette, classy. You pin it to your white coat, wondering if your old professors will see it and feel a twinge of professional envy. It's an open secret among your colleagues. Research is expensive, and no one is handing out cash quite like Big Tobacco. Other companies send pens or calendars, but the tobacco lobby sends briefcases of grant money, no strings attached, as long as the word health appears somewhere in your final report. You get to work in a well-appointed office, enjoy new equipment, and maybe even upgrade your coffee machine to one that doesn't taste like burnt sawdust. Your research begins in the waiting room, clipboard in hand. How are you feeling today? You ask a patient, making careful notes on their mood, handshake firmness, and of course, brand preference. You design a rigorous-sounding protocol, randomly assign participants to one of three groups: regular, menthol, or unfiltered. Observe social interactions and tally smiles per hour. The methodology is loose, but the cigarettes are free-flowing and the sample size grows with every smoke break. The real challenge isn't data collection, it's staying creative in your explanations. Last year's grant went to a project on tobacco as a digestive aid. The year before, nicotine and problem-solving under pressure. This year, you pitch smoking as a tool for neighborly goodwill. After all, nothing builds community like gathering on the porch, passing around a pack, and bonding over shared complaints about the weather. Your research assistants, 2 medical students and the janitor, meticulously record every interaction. Notice how Mrs. Fletcher laughs more after her second lucky strike, one notes. Mr. Brown offered a light to 3 different people, up from last week. The data is conclusive enough. The graphs practically draw themselves. Friendliness spikes at break time, dips only when someone runs out of matches. The final report is a masterpiece of scientific optimism and sponsored phrasing. Preliminary results suggest a strong correlation between tobacco use and positive social outcomes. Further study is warranted, preferably in warm climates, ideally at tobacco-sponsored conferences in Miami Beach. You add a footnote thanking the generous support of America's most trusted brands, and send it off, fully expecting to see it quoted in next month's glossy tobacco magazine. Of course, the grant comes with perks. A scientific advisory council luncheon where you rub elbows with other winners and swap stories about the healing power of a good blend. There's a rumor the next big project will be on tobacco and marital harmony. You start brainstorming taglines. The couple that smokes together stays together. Back at the clinic, you bask in your newfound status as a thought leader. Patients mention your name in the same breath as the words cutting edge. The local newspaper runs a glowing profile. Our town's doctor, making America friendlier, one puff at a time. No one asks too many questions about the funding. Everyone is just happy you're bringing in recognition and maybe a little extra swag. Sometimes, in rare quiet moments, you wonder how much of your research is real and how much is smoke and mirrors. But the grant checks clear, the compliments roll in, and as the tobacco lobby reminds you, progress can't be rushed or scrutinized too closely, because in the 1940s, the real miracle of medical research is making everyone feel good and nobody feel suspicious. It's visiting hour, and the hospital is thick with the smell of burning tobacco and antiseptic. The only thing more common than bandages is the matchbook. Everywhere you look, the scene is pure 1940s medical theatre. Sunlight filters through high windows, catching motes of dust and smoke in the air. More a gentle fog than a public health hazard, at least according to the hospital board. Nurses glide between beds with trays of pills, cotton swabs, and the occasional spare carton for the especially anxious. Doctors move in packs, white coats trailing like wedding trains, each with a cigarette perched confidently between 2 fingers. The only thing more reliable than the drip of an IV is the click of a Zippo. In the wards, each patient has their own system. Some rest with an ashtray balanced on their knees. Others stash a spare pack under their pillow, just in case recovery gets boring. The curtain between beds is as much for smoke control as for privacy. Mr. Daly in bed 3 likes to light up every hour on the hour, convinced it keeps the pain at bay. The nurse brings him matches with his evening medication, a kind of bedside manner rarely seen outside this golden age of medical multitasking. The staff, for their part, have developed a sixth sense for fire safety. When the hospital was built, no one imagined no smoking signs would ever be necessary. After all, what's a hospital if not a sanctuary of healing and shared habits? When an overly enthusiastic visitor tries to sneak a puff in the elevator, the nurses gently redirect him. Please, sir, designated smoking is by the oxygen tanks, not the linens closet. It's a miracle the place hasn't gone up in smoke, but that's the resilience of the human spirit and asbestos ceiling tiles. The operating suite is the last stronghold of smoke-free air. But even there, the surgeons duck out for a quick drag between cases, returning smelling like a bonfire with a hint of iodine. If the anesthesiologist seems relaxed, it's probably not the sedatives. He's just enjoying a post-lunch Chesterfield in the staff room, reading an article on how to calm jittery nerves. Visitors play their part too. Every evening they arrive with flowers, cards, and a carton or two for speedy recovery. It's the unspoken language of hospital etiquette. Skip the grapes, bring the camels. The more serious the illness, the more likely someone will hand you a fresh pack with a solemn wink. It helped my aunt through her gallbladder. You'll be up and smoking again in no time. For new parents in the maternity ward, there's a special tradition. Light up in celebration. Fathers puff with pride. Mothers ask the nurse for a match, and the air is filled with the mingled scents of baby powder and fresh tobacco. Even the delivery room is not immune. A quiet haze drifts out into the corridor, as if new life and new habits arrive together. The janitors, meanwhile, wage a constant battle. Ashtrays fill up, spill over, and are emptied with a resigned sigh. The floor is swept, but the smell lingers, clinging to curtains, walls, and anyone who's spent more than 10 minutes inside the building. Attempts at airing out the wards involve opening a window for 5 minutes before surrendering to the prevailing weather and the prevailing smoke. Sometimes, you pause and take it all in. The haze, the laughter, the low hum of contentment that fills the air. Patients share cigarettes and stories. Nurses trade brands and jokes. The hospital runs on hope, healing, and a well-timed smoke break. You finish your rounds with a last check of the ashtrays, a nod to the night nurse, and a step outside for your own little moment of fresh air. For a second, you imagine a world where hospitals don't smell like tobacco, but the thought fades as quickly as the match you strike for your final cigarette of the night. Because in the 1940s, hospital haze is just another sign that medicine and life go on, one smoky breath at a time. A local school asks for your expert opinion on responsible smoking. You hand out pamphlets and remind the children, always light up after a meal, not before. Welcome to another day in the 1940s, where childhood and tobacco go together like peanut butter and jelly. Only one of them is probably more dangerous. You straighten your white coat, adjust your tie, and arrive at the elementary school auditorium to a round of polite applause and a faint haze wafting from the teacher's lounge. The principal, eager to show the PTA how progressive the curriculum has become, introduces you as our town's most trusted authority on good health and good habits. Your mission? To educate the youth on smoking responsibly. You start with the basics, holding up a glossy pamphlet festooned with cartoon children enjoying a sunny day, each with a cigarette held just so, pinkies out, of course. The pamphlet, courtesy of the local tobacco company, is titled Smart Choices for Growing Kids. Inside, it explains the time-honored tradition of waiting until after meals to light up. It aids digestion, and why sharing cigarettes builds strong friendships and good manners. You deliver your speech with all the confidence of a man who's read exactly one scientific study published in a magazine sponsored by 3 different cigarette brands. Remember, children, never smoke on an empty stomach, always ask before borrowing a match, and never, under any circumstances, take a puff from the principal's private stash without permission. The children giggle, the teachers nod approvingly, and you marvel at the power of peer-reviewed groupthink. There's a Q&A session where little Tommy asks, "Is it true cigarettes make you run faster?" You wink and say, "Well, maybe not faster, but they do make you look more sophisticated at the finish line." Sally wonders if menthols are better for singing in the choir. You suggest that menthols are soothing for the vocal cords, but only after rehearsal, not before. You assure everyone that cigarettes are a grown-up privilege, best enjoyed in moderation and always with adult supervision. The school nurse hands out complimentary packs of candy cigarettes, just to practice proper etiquette, she explains. The children form a tidy queue, pocket their training cigarettes, and promise to tell their parents about the healthy habits they learned from the doctor today. You remind them that, as future leaders of America, it's important to choose quality brands, read the health advice on every pack, and keep their wrappers tidy. Littering is never responsible. You finish the presentation with a rousing group activity, the smoking pledge. Right hands over hearts. Everyone repeats after you. I promise to smoke responsibly, respect my elders' brands, and always ash in the appropriate receptacle. The applause is thunderous, well, as thunderous as a room of sugar-fueled children can muster. Afterward, the teachers gather to thank you for your contribution to public health awareness. One shakes your hand and confides, "Last year's speaker was an optometrist. Didn't have nearly as many practical tips." You're presented with a gift basket, featuring a commemorative lighter and a selection of local blends. The school yearbook photographer snaps a picture for posterity, and you try not to think about how future generations might interpret this scene. On your way out, you pass the playground, where 2 boys are earnestly practicing their smoke ring technique with licorice sticks for now. You offer an encouraging nod and a reminder, "Always after lunch, boys." That's the responsible way. Back at your office, you file away the thank you note from the PTA and reflect on a job well done. You have shaped young minds, bolstered local business, and kept the tradition of responsible smoking alive for another generation. Because in the 1940s, kids aren't just the future, they're the next big market. And every good doctor knows you're never too young to learn about healthy habits. You relax in the lounge, swapping stories of tricky patients and the latest blends. Dr. Harris claims he can diagnose by the shape of your ash. The doctor's lounge is the beating heart of the hospital, an unofficial sanctuary for white coats, creased slacks, and opinions as strong as the midday coffee. The door opens with a creak that lets everyone know you've entered the only room where medicine and mischief mingle freely. Inside, the air is a perfect storm of roasted coffee beans and roasted tobacco, a swirling haze that gives the peeling wallpaper a permanent sepia glow. The furniture is a collection of mismatched armchairs and battered couches, each one molded to the shape of its regular occupant. In the corner, a battered table is stacked with medical journals and magazines, none of which have been opened to any page not featuring a tobacco ad. On the sideboard, 3 ashtrays, 2 coffee pots, 1 empty, 1 pretending, and a mountain of complimentary matchbooks advertising everything from Chesterfields to Dr. Watkins' miracle laxative. Here, credentials don't matter half as much as your cigarette brand. Dr. Harris the self-styled Ash Whisperer, has an uncanny ability to peer into the stub of a Lucky Strike and offer a spot-on guess of your last patient's complaint. "That's a stress fracture if I've ever seen one," he says, flicking a perfectly conical ash. Dr. Green, who smokes only menthols, insists that the cooling effect helps him think clearer during difficult diagnoses. No one has the heart to point out his habit of misplacing stethoscopes. The real gossip flows faster than the smoke. You hear about Mrs. Donnelly's miraculous recovery after switching brands. Someone swears that Dr. Simmons prescribes Pall Malls just because he owns stock in the company. There's a heated debate over whether the hospital's new head of surgery actually inhales. "He's got the lungs of a choir boy and the ego of a brand rep," mutters Dr. Patel. At least 3 people claim to know which nurse is pilfering all the menthols from the break room. Every break comes with a side of bragging. Who had the trickiest diagnosis, the wildest house call, or the most creative excuse for running late to rounds? Someone starts a betting pool on which brand will sponsor the next hospital Christmas party. Odds favor Lucky Strikes, but the Chesterfield rep has been handing out lighters like candy. Every so often, an administrator pokes their head in to ask if maybe, just maybe, the staff could crack a window now and then. They're met with a polite nod and a wall of second-hand smoke. Between sips of coffee and shared packs, you talk shop, vent frustrations, and occasionally even solve medical mysteries. Though most breakthroughs involve discovering where Dr. Blank Lee hid the emergency supply of pastries. "It's behind the encyclopedias," someone whispers. Top shelf. Under the 1942 Guide to Modern Medicine. The lounge is also the great equalizer. Interns learn the ropes, seasoned physicians swap wisdom and recipes for relaxing nightcaps, and rivalries are set aside in favor of a well-timed joke. If you need advice, sympathy, or just a match, this is where you go. Here, medicine is a team sport held together with caffeine, camaraderie, and just the right amount of snark. When the break is over, you stub out your cigarette, finish your coffee, and rejoin the world outside with a little more energy, a little more gossip, and possibly a faint new stain on your coat. You know you'll be back soon. The door never really closes, and neither does the conversation, because in the 1940s, the real pulse of the hospital beats strongest in the lounge, where medicine, mirth, and Marlboros make every day just a little bit lighter. Tobacco companies consult you about their next campaign. You suggest more doctors in lab coats. Someone else proposes healthier packaging, maybe with vitamins. It's not every day you're summoned to a boardroom by men in 3-piece suits whose only knowledge of medicine comes from the back of a cigarette carton. But here you are, sipping complimentary black coffee in a hotel conference room so thick with smoke, you can barely read the gold leaf on the presentation slides. This is the front line of 1940s medical marketing, where admen, doctors, and a small army of consulting scientists plot the future of American health, one puff at a time. You sit at a polished mahogany table as the tobacco execs unfurl their latest brainstorm. A chart showing a smiling physician, stethoscope around his neck, shaking hands with a family of radiant, smoke-loving Americans. "We want to know what doctors really think," one says, as if you haven't just finished a year's worth of doctor-recommended campaigns. You nod wisely and suggest, for the 10th time, that nothing says trustworthy like a lab coat and a gentle squint. Maybe a clipboard too, you add. People love a clipboard. Next to you, the marketing whiz from New York suggests a packaging redesign. What about a touch of green, maybe some vitamin symbols on the label? There's a murmur of approval. One junior exec wonders aloud if you could inject a hint of orange for vitamin C into the blend. For immunity. The room erupts in laughter, but someone writes it down just in case. The conversation is a whirlwind of healthy buzzwords and medical jargon stretched so thin you could read the New York Times through it. Soothing, pure, and recommended by America's finest bounce off the walls with all the sincerity of a politician's handshake. Someone suggests the next ad feature a nurse cradling a newborn, both smiling, both apparently enjoying the smooth flavor of a filtered cigarette. If you want parents' trust, a rep says, start them early. Focus groups become the new battleground. You're asked to evaluate the latest campaign slogans. For stamina and satisfaction. Light up and live well. A doctor's choice, America's voice. You try to look thoughtful while debating which one sounds least like a dare. When asked what makes a cigarette truly healthy, you take a sip of coffee, smile, and say, anything the competition isn't doing. Between meetings, you're treated to a parade of prototypes, cartons with healthful blue, packs touting purified tobaccos, and one ambitious sample that claims to whiten teeth with every puff. Someone floats the idea of adding a vitamin supplement to the filter. Why not? Says the creative director. If people are going to smoke anyway, we might as well give them their daily dose. In quieter moments, you and the other consultants swap stories about the absurdities of the process. Next year, someone jokes, they'll put a pedometer in the pack. Every cigarette walked is a calorie burned. You all laugh, half in jest, half in resignation. When the day ends, you're handed a thick envelope of consulting fees, a fresh carton, and a prototype of next season's Doctor's Blend. As you ride the elevator down, you catch your reflection, lab coat, clipboard, and just a touch of existential dread. But your advice is on record. Your picture might end up in a magazine. And for now, that's enough. Because in the 1940s, designing the doctor's choice isn't about science. It's about selling trust. In a wrapper, just healthy enough to pass for medicine and just clever enough to keep the questions at bay. A rare colleague whispers that maybe, just maybe, cigarettes aren't as healthy as claimed. You both share a nervous laugh and another smoke. It's a quiet moment at the hospital, tucked between the end of afternoon rounds and the start of evening smoke breaks. You're leaning against the window ledge, exhaling thoughtfully, when Dr. Caldwell sidles up, coat askew, brows knit, voice pitched low enough to avoid detection by the passing parade of nurses and pharmaceutical reps. You know, he mutters, gaze fixed on the swirling smoke in the sunbeam. Sometimes I wonder if all these doctor-recommended brands are really doing anyone any favors. It's the kind of heresy that could cost you a prime seat in the lounge. You keep your tone light, matching the gentle absurdity of the era. Surely you're not suggesting our hospital's biggest sponsor might have an ulterior motive. He cracks a smile. The kind that says you're both in on the joke, and both aware it's not much of a joke at all. Conspiratorial asides like these are as rare as a fresh ashtray in the break room. Most of your colleagues treat cigarette endorsements as a fact of life, as inevitable as paper gowns and bad cafeteria coffee. But every now and then, someone raises a skeptical eyebrow at the growing stack of health reports delivered by the tobacco rep. Dr. Caldwell's doubts have been simmering for a while. I saw a man last week. Chronic cough. Can't climb a flight of stairs without wheezing. Said he only smokes the doctor's brand. You nod, recalling your own encounters. Patients whose nerves don't seem calmed, whose coughs linger through every new blend. There's a strange comfort in sharing these doubts, tucked safely between friendly sarcasm and the sweet fog of plausible deniability. You both take another drag, as if the right puff might clear the air or, at the very least, the conscience. Still, outright dissent is dangerous business. The hospital's annual gala is paid for by 3 major tobacco sponsors. The medical journals are thick with advertisements promising smoke for stamina and health by the pack. One word out of place and you risk being labeled a crank or worse, a radical. Dr. Caldwell tells you about a colleague from another city who tried raising concerns at a staff meeting, got reassigned to the night shift, and hasn't seen daylight or a fresh cup of coffee since. In public, everyone toes the line. The hospital board hosts Wellness Week, handing out sample packs and pamphlets. At the local medical society meeting, the loudest voice belongs to Dr. Wilkes, a man so devoted to tobacco, he once gave a lecture with a burning cigarette balanced on the podium. If you want healthy lungs, he bellows, choose a blend that's trusted by science and your local surgeon. No one questions the logic, at least not out loud. Behind closed doors, though, the whispers grow. Some doctors start quietly keeping track of symptoms, noting which patients recover quickest, usually the non-smokers, though the sample size is always inconclusive. A few even request extra copies of those strange European medical journals, the ones with articles questioning the science behind America's most beloved habit. The conversation with Caldwell ends with another nervous laugh and a promise not to mention this to anyone else. After all, you joke, if anyone asks, I'll just say we were discussing the best way to clean out an ashtray. He agrees, tapping out his cigarette with the weary caution of a man who knows change is coming, slowly, quietly, but inevitably. You return to the ward, doubts swirling alongside the smoke. For now, it's easier to laugh and light up than to risk the wrath of the status quo. But something's different. Maybe, just maybe, the tide is turning. One whispered doubt, one nervous laugh, and one shared cigarette at a time. Because in the 1940s, being the first to question the party line isn't just brave. It's a little bit reckless, and a lot more lonely than anyone's willing to admit. A mother asks what to do for her child's asthma. You recommend a new menthol brand, soothing for delicate lungs. Nobody blinks. It's a scene as routine as a morning cup of coffee. Mrs. Riley sits across from you, her brow furrowed, her little boy wheezing quietly by her side. She's tried everything. Steam, honey, sleeping with the window cracked open even when there's frost on the inside of the glass. But the fits persist, rattling the walls and her nerves alike. Desperation brings her to your office, where hope is measured in brands and relief comes wrapped in crisp white cellophane. You reach for your drawer of samples, the one so full of menthols it's practically a mini pharmacy in itself. With the gravitas of a seasoned professional, you present her with the latest menthol blend, its packaging boasting gentle vapor for gentle lungs. You explain without irony that the cooling sensation is especially good for delicate airways, a modern marvel that soothes as it satisfies. Try these, you advise, one after dinner and another before bed. And don't forget to light it for him. Safety first. She nods, grateful, clutching the pack as though you've handed her the very key to childhood health. The boy, eyes wide, looks first at you, then at his mother, as if waiting for the punchline. There isn't one, at least, not yet. You scribble a quick note in the chart. Recommend menthol. Advise gentle inhalation. Monitor progress. The waiting room is full of similar stories. A father comes in, asking about his daughter's persistent cough. Try the new milds, you say. Very easy on the throat. An older woman wants advice for her husband's snoring filtered cigarettes, you suggest. As they improve airflow and reduce irritation, there's a cigarette for every symptom. And every patient leaves with a little more hope and a little more tobacco than when they arrived. The medical journals echo your advice, if not outright dictate it. Menthols for mornings. A physician's guide to modern breathing sits dog. Eared on your desk, sandwiched between healthy lungs, happy life. And the latest newsletter from the American Council for Airway Satisfaction, STD, and funded, of course, by 3 tobacco companies, and a very optimistic printing press. There are no dissenting voices in these pages, just a chorus of endorsements and a sprinkle of anecdotes about remarkable recoveries. You and your colleagues joke about it in the lounge. Dr. Simmons heard you switched your asthmatics to the new menthols. How's their wheezing? Can't hear it over the sound of their gratitude, he replies, drawing laughter and a half-hearted round of applause. If someone raises an eyebrow, it's quickly lowered. The science is as thick as the haze in the break room, and twice as hard to see through. Somewhere in the back of your mind you wonder, will history judge this kindly? You brush the thought aside, just as you brush ash from your prescription pad. There's a comfort in consensus, especially when consensus comes with free samples and a thank you note from the local distributor. Mrs. Riley returns 2 weeks later, her boy's cough softer, though it still lingers. He says, "The menthol tastes funny," she admits sheepishly. You nod, adjust your tie, and offer a different blend, perhaps a light, for variety. She leaves reassured, and you jot another note. Try alternative flavors. Consider promotional options, because in the 1940s, the boundaries between cure and quackery are as hazy as the office air. The line between care and commerce blurs with every new, soothing blend. And if the advice seems strange in hindsight, well, that's just the smoke of progress drifting ever onward. One gentle puff at a time. It's been a long day. The paperwork piles up. You take a break, step out for a cigarette, and tell yourself it's self-care. You're not alone in this ritual. It's the secret handshake of the profession, a tacit understanding that, in the 1940s, nothing says stress relief quite like standing behind the hospital dumpster, white coat flapping in the breeze, squinting through a haze of smoke and unresolved obligations. You pat your pockets, fish out a crumpled pack, and strike a match with the expertise of someone who's lit more cigarettes than birthday candles. The day started early, with a waiting room full of coughs, nerves, and complaints, some medical, some existential. The phones haven't stopped ringing since breakfast. Between patient consultations and the daily parade of pharmaceutical reps, you've barely had a moment to breathe. At least, not deeply. Every chart seems to multiply like rabbits, each one requiring a signature, a comment, a diagnosis, and, occasionally, a minor miracle. Every doctor has their stress rituals. Some drum their fingers on clipboards. Others scribble furious notes in the margins of charts, creating what might be mistaken for medical poetry. But most follow the same pattern. An exhausted sigh, a slow walk to the staff exit, and a moment's solace with America's favorite tension reliever. You've told yourself, and your patients, that it calms the nerves. It's the wisdom of the age. Self-care, by way of self-ignition. You're joined, inevitably, by a rotating cast of colleagues. Dr. Simmons cracks a joke about inhaling deeply and exhaling regret. Dr. Lee recites the day's disasters, 2 no-shows, 1 fainting spell, and a mother convinced her son's hiccups are a sign of possession. Try filtered. You offer, deadpan, chases out the demons. The shared laughter is half camaraderie, half catharsis, and all underpinned by the comforting glow of a dozen embers. Sometimes you wonder how anyone survived the stress of medicine before cigarettes. Yoga isn't a thing yet, and therapy is just what you do in the break room between smoke rings. Your only mantra is 1 more chart, 1 more cigarette, 1 more hour. The walls of your office are lined with posters promising relief and balance. Never mind that the balance is between paperwork and nicotine intake. As the sun sets, you can see the strain etched in everyone's faces. Deep lines, tired eyes, fingers permanently stained by ink and tobacco. The janitor sweeps up a constellation of discarded butts, muttering that doctors are the only people who prescribe their own bad habits. You're tempted to add with great enthusiasm to the end of that observation. The pressure doesn't let up at home. You bring the stress with you, along with the persistent aroma of your favorite blend. Your spouse notices when your sighs last longer than your stories. The kids have learned that a fresh pack means dad needs a few quiet minutes. Even the dog slinks out of the room when you reach for your lighter, an unspoken agreement between species. Stress is contagious, but at least the smoke stays outside. You tell yourself you're coping. You tell yourself it's normal. That someday, someone will invent a better way to handle the constant, relentless grind. But for now, you stand shoulder to shoulder with your colleagues, watching the city lights blink on, sharing jokes and worries, and the silent knowledge that you'll do it all again tomorrow. Because in the 1940s, work-life balance is just another way of describing the time between cigarettes. And if you're lucky, maybe a moment when the stress finally goes up in smoke. Rumors start. Strange cases of smokers' lung pop up in journals. Some doctors mutter about ethics. You keep your head down and keep endorsing. The year is inching toward the 1950s, and suddenly, the once unshakable consensus starts to wobble. Just a little. The first whispers are so faint you can almost ignore them. A cryptic case study here, a letter to the editor there. Smoker's lung, they call it, because Latin is a little too honest for the ad men. One or two medical journals, usually the foreign ones, with names you can barely pronounce, run cautious articles about unexpected respiratory complications and persistent coughs in otherwise healthy adults. You spot the reports at the bottom of the reading pile, sandwiched between a magazine ad for filtered cigarettes and an enthusiastic review of the benefits of deep inhalation. You skim the findings, shrug, and file them under not relevant. Your own patients are still more worried about nerves than lungs, and your colleagues, for the most part, seem content to keep it that way. But the mood in the hospital lounge starts to shift. Dr. Caldwell, last seen muttering about the doctor's brand, brings up a troubling case of chronic shortness of breath in a patient who's never once missed his morning lucky strike. Dr. Harris, the ash whisperer, clears his throat, an ominous sound, even by lounge standards, and wonders aloud if perhaps, just perhaps, the soothing vapor isn't quite as harmless as advertised. The conversation quickly veers back to safer ground gossip, the next hospital dance, which brand has the best coupons. But the seed of doubt is planted. Outside, the world is changing. The newspapers, always hungry for scandal, start running stories about ex-smokers who have, shockingly, survived their own habits and now want everyone to know about it. A few patients ask in low voices if maybe their cough could be that new thing. You smile, reassure them, and recommend a lighter blend. The pamphlets still say doctor recommended, and that's enough for most. But you can't ignore the tension among your peers. Someone brings in a clipping from an overseas journal, black and white photos of lungs that look, frankly, like overcooked brisket. Just the exception, someone else insists, probably genetic, or bad luck. Or maybe the patient just wasn't smoking the right way. You all nod, but the laughter is a little thinner than before. A small group of doctors starts to talk about ethics, a word that always seems to quiet a room. Should we be so quick to endorse? Should we look at the data more closely? These are dangerous questions, the kind that make administrators twitch and tobacco reps sweat. The last thing anyone needs is a hospital full of skeptics. Who else will pose for the next 9 out of 10 doctors campaign? You keep your head down, your advice unchanged, and your pockets full of samples. It's easier, you tell yourself, to trust the research you've been given. After all, the science is in progress. The public wants reassurance, not controversy. And nobody ever built a medical career on being the first to panic. Still, at the end of the day, as you light up behind the hospital, you find yourself watching the smoke a little more closely, wondering what's hiding in that familiar haze. The rumor mill keeps churning, patients keep asking, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a tiny, persistent voice keeps asking if maybe, just maybe, this is what the beginning of a reckoning feels like. But for now, you exhale, smooth out your white coat, and get ready to write another endorsement. Because in the 1940s, the only thing more enduring than the doubts is the need to keep moving, keep smiling, and keep up the appearance that everything, absolutely everything, is just fine. The tobacco companies ask for one last favor. Reassure the public. Write another op-ed. Remind everyone that nerves are far deadlier than smoke. You get the call just as you're finishing your afternoon rounds. A smooth-talking ad man on the other end of the line, voice so polished you can almost hear the smile. "Doctor, we need you," he says, as if you're about to perform surgery on the soul of America. There's a bit of, shall we say, negative publicity floating around. All these rumors about lungs, cancer, what have you. The public needs reassurance. They need a steady hand, preferably one in a white coat. It's not the first time you've been tapped for your authority. You've written op-eds before. The calming benefits of a smoke after dinner. How cigarettes promote social harmony, and the instant classic, why worry when you can inhale? This time, the request is simpler. Remind everyone that nerves are the real enemy. Modern life is stressful, and a little smoke is a small price to pay for peace of mind. You dust off your typewriter, roll in a fresh sheet, and begin. To the editor, you type, "I have seen firsthand the debilitating effects of nervous tension in my practice. Patients unable to sleep, plagued by worry, tormented by the demands of modern society." You lean back, puff thoughtfully, and continue. For these people, the gentle, soothing effect of a well-made cigarette is not just a comfort, it's a necessity. The science, you explain, is in progress. The rumors, you caution, are overblown. The real crisis isn't in your lungs, it's in your mind. You sprinkle your essay with phrases that have become second nature. Doctor approved, backed by years of experience. Safe when enjoyed in moderation. You remind readers that many of the loudest critics are simply anxious souls looking for something, anything, to blame. Let us not be swayed by foreign panic or sensational headlines. America's physicians stand united. For the health of our nation, nerves must be calmed. The next morning, your words are everywhere, pinned to bulletin boards, recited on local radio, folded into every magazine that will have them. The tobacco reps send a thank you note and a fresh supply of Doctor's Choice cartons. Colleagues nod their approval in the lounge, each one quietly relieved that the party isn't over yet. Behind the scenes, the ad men work overtime. New campaigns bloom like dandelions. Nerves. America's hidden plague, reads one billboard, followed by a gleaming photo of a relaxed doctor, you, or someone who looks like you, enjoying a restorative smoke. Radio jingles croon about smooth satisfaction. In the clinics, new posters go up, a smiling family gathered for dinner, all aglow with the soft, comforting haze of doctor-endorsed relief. Some patients question the rumors, hesitantly clutching the op-ed in their hands. "Should I really be worried?" they ask. You give your most reassuring smile and recite your lines. A calm mind is the cornerstone of good health. Don't let baseless rumors cloud your judgment. They nod, grateful. Who needs truth when comfort is so easily prescribed? You wonder, in rare, quiet moments, if the science can be spun forever. The tide outside is turning. Some doctors question, some patients cough a little harder, some journals print a little less cheerfully. But inside your office, inside your own smoky logic, denial is as thick as ever. After all, nerves are tricky things. You can't X-ray an anxiety attack. So you keep writing, keep smiling, and keep the public soothed. One op-ed, one advertisement, one reassuring handshake at a time. Because in the 1940s, the greatest cure isn't in a bottle or a pill. It's in the story you tell yourself. Every time you strike a match and watch the worries drift away. And for now, that's science enough. One morning, the news breaks. Smoking might not be healthy after all. You sit at your desk, looking at the pile of ad contracts, and wonder if cough drops will ever pay as well. It starts innocently enough. Another cup of black coffee, another stack of paperwork, another day ready to be sponsored by America's most trusted brands. The radio hums in the background, the same announcer who once cheerfully crooned cigarette jingles. But this morning, there's a new note of urgency. The Surgeon General, he says, voice heavy with the kind of gravitas usually reserved for presidential announcements and lost puppies, has issued a warning about smoking and health. You freeze. Pen hovering mid-signature above yet another endorsement agreement. The waiting room feels quieter. Somehow, even with the steady coughs and the muted rustle of newspapers, patients glance at the headlines, then at you, then at the ashtray that's always within arm's reach. For the first time in years, the haze in your office isn't comforting. It's a little too thick, a little too revealing. You flip through the papers. New study links smoking to cancer. Doctors under scrutiny. End of an era? The bold print stares up at you, unsmiling. All those years of cheerful ads, earnest op-eds, and scientific studies sponsored by men in hats and pinstripe suits, suddenly, it's all up for review. Around you, the hospital reacts with stunned disbelief and a sprinkling of gallows humor. Doctor. Harris claims he saw it coming and considers switching to herbal tea, though he lights a cigarette to steady his nerves as he says it. The nurses swap theories about what comes next. Maybe we'll start prescribing fresh air, someone jokes. Maybe the next poster will just be a blank wall with a warning label. Everyone laughs. But it's a new sound, uncertain, a little too loud. The tobacco reps are suddenly hard to reach. The hospital's supply of complimentary cartons dries up overnight, replaced by pamphlets from the newly emboldened Council for Clean Living. You stare at your desk, once littered with branded lighters and miniature calendars, now feeling a little like the evidence room after a crime. There's a growing suspicion you might have to learn how to treat actual stress instead of just prescribing it away, one puff at a time. Some patients are angry. Why didn't anyone say anything sooner? They demand. Others are just confused. Is this really true, doctor? After all these years, you wish for your old script, the easy answers, the medical certainty that came wrapped in cellophane. Instead, you find yourself hesitating. You talk about new research, about how medicine is always changing, about how you're here to help however you can. It feels flimsy. It sounds a little like an apology. You shuffle through the ad contracts, wondering if the cough drops company is hiring spokespeople. Maybe there's a future in carrot sticks or herbal teas. Maybe, you think, this is what progress looks like. Messy, embarrassing, and never arriving quite on time. You recall the first time a colleague whispered a doubt. The first time you saw a patient's X-ray and wondered what the shadows really meant. The memory tastes like stale smoke and regret. The reckoning isn't dramatic. It's quiet, persistent. A new kind of fog settling over the profession. Some doctors double down, claiming the whole thing is a panic. Others step away from the spotlight, hoping the smoke will clear on its own. You just keep going, a little less certain, a little more honest. You start offering real advice about quitting, about change, about health that comes from something other than a match and a miracle blend. And as the day winds down, you realize that maybe this is your chance to actually practice medicine instead of marketing. You stub out your cigarette, look at the sunlight outside, and breathe, deeply, warily, for the first time in years. Because in the end, every era has its reckoning. And sometimes, all you can do is face it, cough and all, and try to do better. You enter your clinic, and the first thing that hits you is not the smell of rubbing alcohol or clean linens, it's a luxurious cloud of stale smoke, cough syrup, and the faint aroma of burnt coffee. Patients call it doctor smell. You call it job security. No one complains. They just assume this is what health smells like now. It's the olfactory signature of the era. Every medical office, a perfumed mixture of optimism, denial, and whatever happens to be smoldering in the communal ashtray. Your waiting room, with its faded wallpaper and magazine racks stuffed with last year's Reader's Digest, is the nerve center of your practice. The air is so thick you could bottle it and sell it as odor recovery. A little harsh for a night out, but just right for an annual checkup. The regulars don't even notice the haze anymore. Mrs. Bernstein, wrapped in a tartan shawl, sits closest to the door, so the breeze can get in, even though the only breeze is the one caused by the nurse waving a clipboard to clear her view. Mr. Foster leafs through a magazine, using the pages not to read, but to fan the smoke away from his spectacles. Little Tommy, in for his annual nerves, entertains himself by counting ashtrays. There are 7, not including the one doubling as a candy dish. Even the chairs seem to have absorbed the scent. Sit too long and you'll carry it home with you, a blend of cheap tobacco, liniment, and what might be camphor, or possibly just old hopes and dreams. New patients pause at the door, take a cautious sniff, and decide to stay. After all, if you can't trust a doctor who smells like medicine, coffee, and last night's poker game, who can you trust? On particularly crowded days, the scent takes on new dimensions. Patients come and go, each contributing their own signature notes. Rosewater, mothballs, eau de cologne so strong it battles valiantly with the ever-present tobacco. A stray whiff of antiseptic occasionally rises to the surface. A faint reminder that, technically, this is still a place of healing. You keep the windows closed, of course. Open them, and you risk letting the outside world in: car exhaust, cold drafts, and the sound of Mrs. Kaplan from the bakery across the street, who loves to comment on your parade of coffers. Better to keep the ecosystem contained, carefully balanced between comfort and what passes for fresh air in the mid-1940s. For the staff, the smell is as familiar as the sound of a ringing telephone or the shuffle of charts. The receptionist dabs a little perfume on her handkerchief before answering calls, while the nurse has perfected the art of breathing through her mouth without looking like she's judging anyone's choices. There's a running joke that whoever can identify all the distinct notes in the waiting room air gets the day off. No one ever wins. Of course, there's the occasional attempt at modernization. You once installed a small electric fan in the corner. All it did was redistribute the cloud, turning the gentle fog into a swirling eddy that made the ash settle in geometric patterns. The only real effect was an uptick in sneezing and, inexplicably, a report of the goldfish developing a cough. Yet, underneath it all, the scent is a kind of comfort, a promise that, no matter what new science or scandal is blowing through the newspapers, your clinic remains unchanged. Patients arrive, breathe deep, and relax. If they're still upright after 10 minutes in the waiting room, they figure their lungs must be doing just fine, because in the 1940s, health has a smell all its own. And if that smell happens to cling to your clothes, your briefcase, and your memories, well, maybe that's just the scent of success. You flip through the latest issue of the American Medical Smokers Quarterly. Article after article touts the benefits of deep inhalation for peace of mind, all mysteriously sponsored by every major tobacco brand. Peer review mostly means your colleagues swapping free packs for a positive citation. It's another slow afternoon, the kind where the paperwork is never-ending and the waiting room hums with polite coughs. You retreat to your office, stack of medical journals in hand, searching for scientific inspiration, or, failing that, a new reason to recommend menthols. The glossy cover of Smokers Quarterly beams up at you, promising cutting-edge research from the nation's leading lung experts. You recognize 3 names on the cover, all doctors who were recently spotted at the tobacco industry's annual golf retreat. Inside, the studies read more like advertisements than science. A comparative study of calming effects. Unfiltered versus filtered, the abstract concludes that both are beneficial, but filtered has a modern appeal. The next article, Inhalation and Innovation. How Deep Breaths Improve Office Morale, is illustrated with photos of lab-coated doctors blowing perfect smoke rings. If you squint, you might spot your own blurry figure in the background, coffee cup in one hand, complimentary pack in the other. The methods section is a masterclass in creative science. One study explains, participants were randomly assigned a carton of their preferred brand and observed during regular hospital breaks. The results section is filled with phrases like statistically robust and subjectively satisfying, and the conclusions are always clear. Further research is needed, but in the meantime, more smoking couldn't hurt. The peer review process is just as scientific. Reviewers are hand-picked, often from the same list of contributors who received last month's Research Excellence lighters. Notes scribbled in the margins include excellent use of anecdote and send more samples for further study. A particularly glowing review is punctuated by a cigarette burn, a badge of honor in this circle. Occasionally, you submit your own work, something modest, like short-term improvements in pulse rate after a soothing smoke. You mail it off with a hopeful note, and, as tradition dictates, a complimentary pack for the editor. 2 weeks later, your article appears, sandwiched between the science of flavor, why doctors prefer camels and nicotine, nerves, and national well-being. Advertisements are woven into every page. Doctor recommended for busy lives. Relief for nurses. Backed by clinical proof. Even the editorial page features a small, tasteful illustration of a doctor lighting up at his typewriter, presumably drafting next month's headline, Why You Should Prescribe More. Not everyone is convinced. You and Dr. Caldwell, ever the secret skeptic, share a laugh about the groundbreaking findings. Did you see the new study on menthol and memory retention? He asks, flipping through the magazine. Apparently, remembering to buy more menthols counts as improved recall. You both agree, as long as the research is sponsored by a tobacco brand, the conclusion is never in doubt. Still, the journals do their job. Patients trust the phrase recent studies show. Even if the studies are shorter than a pack insert and 3 times as entertaining, your own authority is reinforced with each new publication. And the hospital is happy, as long as the samples keep arriving and the waiting room stays full. Late at night, you wonder what future doctors will think of this golden age of research. Will they marvel at your ingenuity or laugh at your gullibility? Maybe both. But for now, you file the latest issue alongside the others, light a cigarette, and start drafting your next peer-reviewed masterpiece. Because in the 1940s, publishing puff pieces is just another part of the doctor's toolkit, smoke, mirrors, and a whole lot of well-funded confidence. You pile into your Buick for a home visit, your medical bag rattling with stethoscopes, bandages, and naturally, a carton or 2 just in case. By the time you arrive, you've ashed in the car, on your tie, and possibly in your own medical bag. the patient offers you a cigarette before you even sit down, just to show they trust your expertise. It's the golden age of the traveling physician, and you are a rolling ambassador of health, hope, and the ever-present aroma of tobacco. House calls are the lifeblood of your practice. They get you out of the office, away from the ever-expanding mountain of paperwork, and into the real heart of the community, where people actually live, cough, and put their trust in the man with a black bag and a badge of ash on his lapel. The drive itself is a ritual. You navigate city streets and country lanes, windows cracked for fresh air that only succeeds in swirling the cigarette smoke around your head like a halo. The Buick's ashtray is overflowing before you even leave the block, but you keep going, determined to arrive in a frame of mind and scent that says doctor on duty. If the engine starts to smell a little toasty, you just turn up the radio and chalk it up to progress. Arriving at the patient's home, you're greeted with the warm hospitality of the era. Shoes wiped, coat hung, a polite handshake, and a silver tray bearing a full ashtray and a fresh pack for your trouble. Mrs. Wilkins, your first patient, gestures to the sofa and insists you take a seat. Doctor, let me get you a light. You must be tired after such a long drive. It's less a question than a rite of passage. You accept because professionalism demands it, and because, frankly, you could use a smoke. The examination proceeds with the casual choreography of old friends. You listen to coughs, feel foreheads, and jot notes on a chart that will probably be sprinkled with a bit of ash before the day is done. If the patient coughs, you recommend a milder blend. If they mention nerves, you hand over a sample pack. There's a cigarette for every occasion and a brand for every symptom. House calls are as much social calls as medical ones. You learn the latest neighborhood gossip, are offered a second cup of coffee, strong enough to dissolve a teaspoon, and asked about everything from back pain to the best way to keep a goldfish alive in a smoky house. You share polite laughs and the occasional secret, a new menthol on the market, a coupon for a local pharmacy, or your personal theory that the neighbor's roses are growing so well thanks to all the butts in the soil. Sometimes you see several generations under one roof. Grandpa smokes old golds, Dad prefers unfiltered Camels, and Junior, not to be left out, is practicing smoke rings with licorice sticks. You offer advice to each, knowing that the best medicine you're providing today might just be the reassurance that everything is, in fact, under control. Just keep calm, keep smoking, and keep an eye out for anything out of the ordinary, besides the goldfish turning yellow. On your way out, you leave behind a trail of goodwill, a couple of branded matchbooks, and a faint whiff of tobacco that will linger long after your Buick's taillights disappear down the street. You wipe the ash from your tie, pat your pockets for your next pack, and make a note to check the Buick's upholstery for burn marks, because in the 1940s, a doctor's house call is equal parts healthcare, housewarming, and impromptu tobacco tasting. And everyone knows, if the doctor leaves behind a cloud of smoke, it means you're in good hands. Just off the main lobby, past the gift cards and wilted carnations, you'll find the real star of the hospital, the cigarette counter. Need a get-well-soon pack of Lucky Strikes? Maybe a sorry about your bronchitis carton? The hospital's biggest debate is whether to stock matches next to the greeting cards or the candy bars. The hospital gift shop is a world unto itself, a curious blend of capitalism and comfort, where the smell of antiseptic mingles cheerfully with freshly opened cigarette packs. The bells above the door jingle as visitors come and go, all on a mission. A bouquet for Mrs. Ellis in room 204, a crossword puzzle for Mr. Peterson, or the all-important variety carton for that uncle who can't decide if his ailment is more of a Chesterfield or Camel kind of problem. Behind the glass counter, Mrs. Myers reigns supreme. She's worked the register since before the hospital had an X-ray machine, and she can size up a customer's brand loyalty faster than a triage nurse can spot a fake cough. Pall Malls for the gentleman in the blue hat, Camels for the lady with the floral handbag. She instructs her assistants, and make sure the menthol display faces the window. Flu season's coming. For visitors, the cigarette counter isn't just a stop on the way to recovery, it's a ritual. You scan the shelves. Rows of colorful cartons, each promising doctor, approved relief, and the smoothest smoke this side of the nurse's station. The selection is impressive. Every flavor, filter, and packaging innovation the tobacco companies could dream up. Right there among the teddy bears and hang in there balloons. The hospital board holds heated debates about inventory. Should menthols be displayed closer to the maternity ward for the new mothers? Is it ethical to upsell a pack of matches with every Feel Better Fast card? The dietitian once suggested stocking carrot sticks as a healthy alternative. The idea was quickly laughed out of the room. After all, you can't autograph a carrot stick. And you certainly can't tuck one behind your ear for later. Doctors, for their part, have a silent arrangement with the gift shop. Every so often, a nurse will slip out with a note. Need 2 packs, unfiltered, for Dr. Simmons, and return moments later with the goods wrapped in a discreet paper bag. If a patient is feeling down, you might prescribe a little something from the lobby, knowing full well it'll be delivered with a smile and maybe a few words of advice on proper ashing technique. For children, the real draw is the candy cigarette display. Bright boxes line the lower shelves, advertising smoke rings for beginners and cherry flavor for the brave. Little Timmy can practice his exhale while Grandma gets her morning blend, a generational bonding moment if ever there was one. On busy days, the line at the counter rivals the admissions desk. Congratulations on your surgery. Here's a carton to speed your recovery. Or, heard about your diagnosis. Hope these help with the nerves. The staff swear by their favorites and exchange brand gossip while unboxing new inventory. Heard Chesterfields are giving out free calendars this month. If you buy 3 packs, you get a matchbook with a doctor's face on it. Hospital administrators try to keep up appearances. A small, polite sign reads, "Please do not smoke near the oxygen tanks." But everyone knows it's just for show. The real policy is unspoken. If you're not buying for yourself, you're buying for a friend, a patient, or a colleague who forgot their carton at home. Because in the 1940s, the hospital gift shop isn't just a convenience. It's a cornerstone of morale, a community hub, and the surest sign that, here, the line between health and habit is as thin as a rolling paper. You ring up your purchase, pocket the change, and head back to the ward, gift in hand and a faint aroma trailing behind. Another day, another pack, another small act of bedside comfort. It's conference season, and the hotel ballroom is full of white coats, martinis, and a gentle haze so thick you could cut it with a tongue depressor. After a hard day of lectures about the calming effects of nicotine, you gather in the lounge, clinking glasses and swapping stories of medical miracles, most of which start with a patient lighting up. The annual physician's retreat is the high point of the medical social calendar. You step into the grand ballroom, carpeted in patterns designed to disguise the inevitable ash stains, and you're greeted by a wall of sound and scent, laughter, ice clinking in highball glasses, and that familiar blend of aftershave, starch, and burning tobacco. The organizers have left no detail unattended. Crystal ashtrays glint on every table, and cigarette girls in crisp uniforms circulate, offering complimentary sample packs from every major sponsor. The first order of business, naturally, is a seminar entitled Stress Management and the Modern Doctor. Why nicotine is your friend. You and your colleagues settle in, some dutifully taking notes, others using the opportunity to perfect their smoke ring technique. The speaker, a distinguished gentleman with a gravelly voice and a suspiciously persistent cough, winks as he proclaims, "A relaxed doctor is a successful doctor, and nothing says relaxed like a quality smoke." After lectures, it's on to the real reason everyone attends: networking. The hotel lounge is transformed into a living cloud. Doctors lounging in armchairs, swapping patient stories, debating which new filter tip has the most robust mouthfeel. The martini glasses never seem to empty, and neither do the ashtrays. Dr. Harris insists that the right blend can cure a bad case of nerves. Dr. Caldwell argues for menthols as refreshment in stick form. And someone in radiology claims to have invented a two-handed smoking technique for faster results between patient charts. The tobacco reps, dressed to impress, glide between groups, doling out branded matchbooks, engraved lighters, and the occasional lecture invitation with a wink. Every conversation comes with a compliment and a carton. Love your research on inhalation techniques, doctor. Can I interest you in a sneak peek at our new Health Forward blend? The line between education and entertainment blurs, but nobody complains. Between rounds of gin rummy and war stories about the time I diagnosed appendicitis just by hearing a cough, someone starts a contest for the most outrageous patient anecdote. Lady comes in, says she's allergic to smoke, but loves the smell of fresh tobacco. What do you prescribe? Easy. A carton of low tar and a window seat. The laughter is genuine, if occasionally punctuated by a fit of coughing that everyone agrees is just part of the business. Late into the night, you find yourself outside on the terrace with a small crowd, gazing at the city lights through the haze. Discussions turn philosophical. Has medicine really advanced, or is it all just clever marketing? You muse about the future. Maybe next year the conference will be in Miami. Maybe they'll finally unveil a vitamin-enriched blend. Maybe the hotel will figure out how to ventilate a ballroom. Eventually, you make your way back to your room, clothes saturated with memories and Marlboros, conference swag bag heavy with research samples. You collapse onto the bed, replaying the day's debates, jokes, and toasts. For a moment, you wonder what the next generation of doctors will make of all this. But for now, you drift off to sleep, to the soft hum of room service and the echo of laughter in the halls, knowing that in the 1940s, the real lessons of the physician's retreat aren't found in the lecture slides, but in the haze of camaraderie, competition, and the reassuring flicker of a match. Because nothing bonds a profession like a smoky getaway, a generous sponsor, and a story that always starts. There I was, cigarette in hand. So, as tonight's haze finally clears, let's take a deep breath of clean air, hopefully, and look back at the smoky whirlwind that was the 1940s doctor's life. You made it through the waiting rooms cloudier than a jazz club, handed out soothing cigarettes like candy, and endorsed products with a smile that said, "Trust me, I'm a professional." You navigated medical journals sponsored by Marlboro, gave house calls that doubled as smoke breaks, and watched hospital gift shops stock up on new health supplies, no questions asked. But beneath the laughable slogans and the endless ashtrays, there was a real struggle. The battle between what science knew, what the world wanted to believe, and what paid the bills. Every prescription written with a wink, every puff in the doctor's lounge, every reassuring commercial, these were just snapshots of an era where trust and denial mixed like tobacco and menthol, and where health was a moving target, often hidden behind a marketing poster. Still, you can't help but marvel at the resilience, the hope, and, yes, the ridiculous optimism that people brought to their jobs, even when the facts started to catch up. Because history isn't just a string of bad decisions. It's proof that people are stubborn, inventive, and sometimes hilariously wrong all at the same time. So tonight, as you tuck into your clean bed, surrounded by the miracle of air purifiers and warning labels, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to the past. The scientists who kept asking questions, the whistleblowers who finally coughed up the truth, and yes, even the chain-smoking doctors who did their best. One smoky breath at a time. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that even in a cloud of confusion, people muddle through, learn, adapt, and occasionally, mercifully, quit cold turkey. Good night, and breathe easy.